Bismillahi walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Welcome. Once again, we join in this course. We're now in the seventh session to talk about the idea of marriage in Islam and to prepare ourselves for that process. We've been talking about the idea of why it is that some people get married and the need to be clear on why it is that we want to get married as individuals. There's one thing to be clear about the general guidance that Islam gives us for marriage, and there's another thing that we are clear with ourselves. Why is it that I am seeking marriage? Last time we met, we were talking about the idea that some people get married to preserve their chastity, meaning to protect themselves from falling into the haram. And we left off with talking about how that in itself is not necessarily a bad reason, but there are some people that they are looking at marriage as a way to solve an issue that they have with sex, and how marriage in itself is not enough to solve that issue of sex if it has become a problem. And individuals who are struggling with that, they have to be really honest and they have to confront themselves on what it is that they're struggling with when it comes to sex, so that they go into the marriage understanding that marriage is not just all about sex. Sex is only one part of marriage. And so the idea that marriage by itself is going to protect us is not enough. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he indicated to the importance of learning how to control ourselves. He said, "Oh, young people, whoever among you can get married uh, should marry, because it helps lower the gaze, guard modesty, and whoever is not able to marry should fast, as fasting diminishes his sexual appetite." And so in the hadith, there is a clear indication that marriage is a safeguard, but there's also this idea that if a person is not prepared to get married, then that person should discipline themselves and develop themselves in whatever capacity that's necessary, whatever way that's necessary, so that they can go into the marriage. And sometimes we read the hadith of just thinking of marriage being the solution to struggling with sex, and that's not true. That's not true. People have to be in a good relationship with themselves, and they have to understand sex in a healthy way, and they have to understand that sex is only one part of marriage. Some people go into marriage for companionship. This is one of the other reasons that people marry. And so sometimes even that becomes a problem. Why? Because some people, if they don't know how to be with themselves, if they're looking for a partner to take away their sense of loneliness completely, that's going to be an issue. We have to learn how to be with ourselves, and we have to learn how to be with people. Yes, a partner can help us with loneliness, but a partner can't always take away that sense of loneliness if I'm not good with myself. See what I'm saying? If I suffer from anxiety and I need to be around people in order to make myself feel secure, what happens when my partner has to go to work? What happens when my partner goes to visit a relative? What happens when my partner is not with me? If I'm not clear on how to deal with myself and what it is that I'm struggling with, then it doesn't mean uh, that marriage is going to solve that for me. And let me put it in a different way. I have to be clear what it is that I'm struggling when it comes to loneliness. And there's a sort of loneliness that can be resolved with marriage. But if the loneliness is for other reasons, I feel misunderstood, I don't have any friends, I have been alone for a long time. I was in a previous marriage. I was divorced for a long time, and I'm used to being alone, but at the same time, I'm struggling with being alone. I'm used to people feeling that people don't love me, or I think that I can never have happiness in life, and I feel lonely because of that. And everyone that comes into my life, I have issues with. In other words, we have to learn how to be with people, and we have to learn how to be with ourselves. And we have to understand that sometimes loneliness is healthy. There's a healthy aspect to loneliness, but not lonely, feeling lonely all the time, whether I'm with people or without people. So we also have to learn that companionship, marriage brings us a special type of companionship. But we have to learn that sometimes our spouse can't be everything for us. You see what I'm saying? It would be nice to have all the qualities that we want in friendship in our spouse, but that may not always be the case. Not, I may have some things that I like to do that my spouse may not like to do. You know what I'm saying? I may like certain types of conversations. My spouse doesn't like those conversations. I may like to go hiking. My spouse may not like to go hiking. I may like martial arts. My spouse may not like martial arts. In Islam, we have a community mindset. And so there's things that, yes, my spouse may not like to do, but my Muslim brother or my Muslim sister may like to do that. You understand what I'm saying? And that complements my life. Having relationships with friends supports my marriage when those friends are in a healthy relationship with me. So I can partake in activities with them. And what that does is it makes my relationship with my companion in marriage, it makes that relationship more full because now I'm more well-rounded. I have a relationship with my relatives. I have a relationship with my friends. I have a relationship with myself, and I have a relationship with my companion. So when we talk about companionship, we have to be realistic about what it is that we want from our spouse. Some people want everything from their spouse, and when they don't get it, then they're ready for divorce, and that's not fair. That's not fair to want everything from your spouse. It is ideal. It is beautiful if you can get everything out of friendship from your spouse. And some people have that type of relationship with their spouses, but that doesn't mean that everyone is going to have that type of relationship. But the best companionship is to be able to enjoy time with our spouses, to be at peace with our spouses, and to be able to have a relationship with God with our spouses, communicate with our spouses, and live at peace. But that doesn't mean that our spouses have to be everything for us. And when they fail us and being everything that we want them to be, then all of a sudden they're not a good spouse. That's not a good concept, healthy concept of companionship, right? So here it says, we sometimes get complaints that a person feels the spouse is not their friend. People with these complaints have an expectation that they can play with their spouse, joke with him or her, and rely on their spouse as a confidant. They are seeking the emotional support of friendship, which leads them to consider the issue of rights and responsibilities in the context of friendship. They demand things of one another, but also want to confide in each other. They are seeking an intimate type of communication and enjoyment of each other's company. Other couples distinguish between their spouse and their friends, defining different roles for each other, for one another. For example, the spouse may be the one to provide financially to take care of the home, but is not the person viewed as someone to have fun with. Some spouses say they need their friends to release their stress and relax so that they can maintain a good relationship with their spouse. Many men consider a companion to be a woman who is there in the house, serving the tea, attending his needs, and keeping him company without confiding in her or sharing with her. The Quran refers to women as companions, suggesting that the marital relationship is one that includes a deep friendship. An Islamic marriage includes both the obligations and responsibilities of taking care of one another, in addition to the enjoyment of each other's company. In order to have a healthy relationship, you must first define what you mean by companionship and friendship, and then learn what your spouse means by that as well. You should also remember that while your spouse could be a wonderful friend and companion, each of you should also have other friends in order to have a balanced and healthy life together. So that's something that grows over time, and we have to develop those skills, right? But sometimes what we want out of our spouse is, we want someone to have the same likes that we have in the same way. And if they don't have those same likes in the same way, then all of a sudden we say that there's no friendship. So that's an area where we have to develop and growing as Muslims, because in today's time, a lot of people want a friend and a spouse, and we see that it is Islamic, but you can't have the same type of friendship with your spouse that you may have with someone that you've known for 20 years prior to getting married, or your best friend that's your cousin, and they watch you grow up. So we have to give our spouses a chance to learn how to be our friends. And we have to also learn what healthy friendship is with our spouses. That's important, people. This one, it needs more thought and work, but like was mentioned in the book, that yes, friendship is part of marriage, but we have to grow into that, right? And we have to be careful as to what it is that we're demanding in terms of what friendship is. To be a little more clear, we have to grow in friendship in our marriage. We can't just automatically expect our spouse to be that friend that we don't have. That's why it was mentioned that having friends outside of marriage is something that's healthy and it's important, right? So that way, our spouses can begin to learn how to be our friends when we're open about that, when we're openly communicating with them. Some people, they marry because they want children. Now that's good. That's a solid one in the marriage. But what happens if that doesn't happen? What happens if you can't have children in that marriage, right? And so they, that's something that is an issue. Another thing that comes up is that what happens if one person wants children and the other person doesn't? Well, I've seen that in counseling many times, and that can become a problem. Sometimes people, they think that children are going to tie them to their spouse, and they feel secure when there's children around. And in my estimation, that is not necessarily the case. What ties us to our spouse is that we learn how to love one another, we learn how to trust one another, we learn how to be committed to one another, we learn how to worship Allah together, we learn how to live together, and we learn how to be at peace together, and then children solidify that marriage. But if we don't have a good relationship with our spouse, we don't have good communication, we don't have a good sense of understanding our spouse, then what ends up being the case when we have children, sometimes those children can strain the relationship. Or when we don't have children, see what I'm saying, and we're not really solid friends with one another, we think that children are going to change the dynamic. But what ends up being the case is that when those children don't come, it becomes an issue. Some people, they have fertility problems. They may be able to have one child, but they can't have another child. They may not be able to have any children at all. And so that it is a serious issue in a relationship in which the person was getting married to have children, or that was a clear want that they had from the beginning. And so we have to realize that the relationship is much more than having children, right? And we have to realize that having children is something that we have to prepare for. And sometimes it may be the case that that you have to have a conversation, even though we don't use the term adoption Islamically, but bringing a child into your life, in terms of adopting that child legally, you know what I'm saying, to raise them Islamically, that's okay. That has to be a discussion if it is the case that you can't have children, right? If it is the case that you can't have children. The only Islam doesn't forbid bringing children to raise them into the home. What Islam forbids is to X out the child's identity so that the child is confused about what is their origin, who are their original biological parents, to confuse them in that regard. But raising children, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a topic in and of itself, the complexity of how to do that. People get confused on that, but Islam doesn't forbid that. There's so many Muslim children that are in need of Muslim parents, and they are orphaned. They don't have that support. And that is a good way to address the issue of not being able to have children, right? And that needs some more research. Some people get married for financial security, right? And that's really why they get married, so that they don't have to work and so that they can be financially secure, they can be taken care of. And one of the problems that happens with this is that when finances become an issue, and sometimes they do, then the person that wanted to get married solely for financial security, they don't know what to do in that relationship. And they end up charting their way or planning their way out of the relationship because the economics of the relationship is not where they wanted it to be. So that's not necessarily the most solid reason to get married, right? And some people, they get married because what they want out of the relationship is they see their potential spouse making the money that they want. So they're willing to struggle because later on, the money that they want or the standard of living that they want to be at is what they think they're going to get. And that may not happen. We have to be realistic with these issues. So people have to be clear from the beginning as to why it is that they're getting married when it comes to the economics. You know what I'm saying? And yes, there's certain expectations to be met, but there has to be a clear understanding of what people's economic situation is, transparency, the author says, so that there can be a healthy relationship. Because economics, a person can be rich and then lose everything. How many people do we know that they have had businesses and then they go bankrupt? Or something happens and everything collapses. You see what I'm saying? So if your only reason for marrying is money, then you're really banking on something that's problematic. I'm not saying don't include money in the equation. I'm saying that you have to have an understanding of what the money uh, expectation is going to be, so that you're clear on that and so that you can work through issues as they come along. Sure, there's a certain type of lifestyle that wants to be uh, that people want to have, but they have to be clear about economics and what is the percentage that it plays in influencing your decision to get married. Is it 50%? Is it 70%? Is it 80%? Or is it just part of the reason why you want to get married to to a specific person? Money is one of the reasons. Money problem is one of the major reasons why people they get divorced. The other issue is some people they want to get married to escape their families, or they want to escape their economic situation. See what I'm saying? They want to escape being in a relationship that they were, so they use a new marriage as an excuse to get out of an old marriage, or they use the new marriage, as an excuse to get out of their parents' home, or they use the marriage as an excuse to get out of a situation that they're in. Don't get confused about the examples, but focus on the idea of, am I marrying to escape? Am I married to escape a situation? You know what I'm saying? That's what you have to ask yourself. Some people, they want to leave their countries. They want to escape that situation, so they're willing to do anything, even marry for coming out, of that situation that they're in. And like we said, some younger women, they use marriage to get out of an abusive situation that they experience with their parents, or because they don't want to maybe go to school or have a career, so they're looking at marriage as an escape from their situation. Other people, they look at marriage as a means to settle down. So they've been in multiple relationships. And so then now they feel as though they want to settle down. And the problem is that they've been in multiple relationships without ever doing any work on themselves. Sometimes some parents push marriage on their young boys as a way to escape the fact that their children, their son, has been falling into situations that are haram. And so they push marriage as a solution to get out of that situation. And so then they find a young sister that has no experience with life, and they end up marrying that young sister to their son. And then what happens is that that person really was not ready for marriage. It was pushed into the marriage. And so they're settling down now because the parents are forcing them to settle down. Or some people, they have been in multiple relationships and now they want to settle down because they're tired. But the lifestyle they have lived is that. So people have to be careful that they're not using marriage to settle down, right? And it's not only settle down in that sense that they've been in multiple relationships, but it could be for a lot of different reasons that people are trying to settle down. It could be that they want to settle down because now they're thinking about what their economic future is. So they want a partner to come in to help them financially to escape their situation. See how the reasons overlap with each other? And so then now they want to settle down because they're thinking about what is their future going to hold. And some people, they wait for a long time. And then when they see themselves older, they want to hurry up and get married because they want to have a child and settle down because they realize now, if they don't get married at this point in time, they're not going to be able to have children later on. So settling down should be that people want to settle down because they want to enter into a relationship with a person that they want to build life with. and they want to accompany with, and they want to support in the deen, and they want to befriend, right? We have to have healthy reasons while we're married. You understand what I'm saying? Some of these reasons are not bad in themselves, but when they become the sole reason for why a person is married, yes, it becomes an issue. Some people have false hopes and dreams of marriage. You understand what I'm saying? They fall in love with a person who is really not their friend or their equal, right? And so, like, students fall in love with teachers, or patients with physicians, etc. Or some people fall in love with their employers. And so these examples that are being given are being given to demonstrate the idea of a false hope, a false hope. So people sometimes they imagine the person to be a certain way, and they're not that way, right? And so those examples are there. So people shouldn't have a false hope that this person is going to come and save me, or this is my dream person. And in reality, they haven't developed a relationship with that person. Some people feel that they have to get married because of an obligation or a guilt. And sometimes we find this when people they fall into a relationship in which is haram, and then they feel as though they have to correct that situation by marrying that person. And they never had the idea of being in companionship with their relationship. Uh, in that relationship, they never had the idea of staying in it. And what happens is that they, out of guilt, they say, well, I have to correct it. Sometimes that happens when people get pregnant. Then they automatically want to be in the marriage. So that's not necessarily a good reason to get married, because you feel obligated to, or you feel guilty. People should marry because they want to marry, and they have determined that this person is someone that they can work with and live with. Some people marry because they want to take care of a widow or an orphan. This is a common reason that is talked about as being noble, but at the same time, that this is a reason why people choose. They have to ensure that they're doing it with someone that they can actually be compatible with, not just because of the reward, but someone that they can actually live life with. Because what happens if they get married to a widow or an orphan, and they see that as a way to get rewarded with the law for doing good, but then they can't live with that person? You understand what I'm saying? They can't uh, find anything that they like in that person in actuality. That's going to end up leading to divorce. Right? So compatibility is something that is very important. In the next session, we're going to deal with the idea of age, when is an appropriate age to get married, and the types of people that are seeking marriage, whether they're single, never been married, no prior relationship, single, previous relationship, etc., divorce, no children, divorce with children, widows and widowers, remarrying with children. We're going to talk about those types of concepts, and even the whole idea of married and seeking a second wife. We're going to talk about these ideas as reasons why people, are getting married, because they're single, or because they want another spouse, or they want to settle down, or they need someone to take care of their children, etc. We'll talk about these issues that come along and the text. And then once we finish that section, we're going to go into factors to consider when choosing a spouse. So we're going to clarify the whole idea of who it is that we're choosing to get married with. And we talked already about some solid reasons why we should get married, right? And then we're talking about some personal reasons, why people get married. We've been talking about those things for the past couple of sessions. Personally, why some people choose to get married. It may not necessarily be an Islamic concept that they have. They can have a very personalized reason. Other people, they think about how it is that Deen guides them to what marriage is, what Islam wants out of marriage, then what are their human needs, and then they have personal reasons, and they have healthy personal reasons as to why they're marrying a specific person, and they choose that person in such a way that their relationship is a benefit to them. So chapter 3 will cover the whole issue of factors to consider when choosing a spouse. And in chapter 3, what we'll do is we'll clarify more some of the themes that we've been covering thus far so that you can reflect as a way to consider marriage in a healthy manner, in a manner that will be beneficial to you and your potential spouse. And with that, we end the Assalamu alaikum wa